Some battles are famous for size or fate. Others matter because they reveal the human in war, the stubborn will to live, the terrible small choices that decide who returns. Lieutenant-Commander Hitzudze's account is one of those stories. Odd, harrowing, and impossibly human. Lieutenant-Commander Hitzudze was not a man of boastful tales. He was a patrol pilot, the quiet kind who measured worth by hours in the air and the health of his crew. Born in the early 1900s, trained to navigate the vast Pacific, he commanded long-range reconnaissance flying boats that watched enemy movements and carried the fragile thread of intelligence across endless blue. In late 1942, the Solomons had hardened into a grinding contest of wills. Guadalcanal was no longer just a name on a map. It was a place of loss. Japanese flying boats, the H-6K and H-8K types, flew long patrols, often under threat, sometimes never to return. Hitzudze's squadron had already lost many boats. Every sortie felt heavier. It was 7 o'clock on the 21st of November, 1942. We were about 150 nautical miles south of Guadalcanal, heading our assigned track, when the tail gunner called over the intercom. "Enemy aircraft! Close! Rear right!" The grip of tension in my chest tightened at once. We were a reconnaissance boat, not meant for a dogfight. Still, our losses had been mounting. 16 flying boats gone in a few weeks. I swore then I would not be number 17. "All stations to battle stations," I ordered, and pushed the throttles forward. I dropped toward the sea to reduce our profile, hoping the low altitude and surface glare would hide us. Our boat, heavy with long wings and a slow turning radius, was vulnerable, but it had armor on the radio room and a stout tailgun. We would use what we had. At first, the B-17 kept above and behind us, maintaining a comfortable position to radio our case to its base. I guessed it might call for fighters. That alone would be enough to doom us. But then I saw him, higher and to our right rear, a heavy silhouette with the unmistakable waist and tail. He held position, as if watching, waiting. I executed a sudden, energetic turn to the left. A lumbering patrol boat turning sharply is awkward, but it was our only chance. Our advantage, a relatively small turning radius when we were slow and low, and the hope that the B-17's gunners would be slow to track in such a close, low encounter. When we crossed, tracer threads stitched past us. Our tailgun replied. Sparks licked the B-17's left inner engine. Smoke sprayed from his nacelle. He peeled off, trailing a black plume. For a moment, I thought it over. Perhaps we had driven him away. We attempted to resume patrol. I told the men to eat quickly. Little comfort in a tin of food when the sea could become your tomb. But then the second B-17 climbed out of cloud ahead, left of our course. The one we had hit likely had called for help. We prepared again. The crew readied ammunition, closed fuel lines, and I shut the gas vents and triggered the CO2 flooding for empty tanks. Precautions against fire. The forward gunner smiled under his turret, and I felt the cold, steady calm of a commander who must keep fear from spreading. At 30 meters and 150 knots, we made for cloud cover. The B-17 did not immediately press home a head-on attack. It passed us by, perhaps avoiding our tail arcs. It was patient. Then it turned and came at us on a crossing run. When it went past, tracer streaks brightened the sky. Neither side scored a hit that pass. The sea beneath us boiled with the wake of bullets. The sound was all I could hear, engines and the metal staccato of guns. On the fourth pass, his bullets struck the cockpit. A scream cut through the steady roar. Watanabe, our chief radio man, had been hit at the shoulder. Blood sprayed the ceiling. Nakana, our flight engineer, was slumped, shouting, "Fuel! Fuel!" The telegraph key's spark could ignite what was now leaking. For a moment, I thought only of fire, of the gasoline running like a river across the floor of the hull. The man kept transmitting, "We are attacked by a bomber." His voice was steady through the pain. I saw the fuel streaming from a ruptured tank. I ordered CO2 into the tanks and shoved more into the breached compartment. The white fog filled the empty space, and for a few seconds the horrible smell of fuel was stilled. We bandaged wounds as best we could. I tied my scarf tight around Watanabe's shoulder. The boat shuddered. Each hit sent waves through the hull. The forward gunner grinned, mad with focus. We kept firing. I had seen the tail marks, the way his gunners tracked us. I began to be sure this particular B-17 had been hunting our type before. He was not acting as a mere spotter. He had scored kills on flying boats. My resolve hardened. He must not be allowed another victory. When he crossed again, our tail gun turned and fired a drum of 20mm shells into his fuselage. The hits were good. Sheets of metal departed his skin, and oil and gas leaked. He rolled away, heavy, smoking. When he came around again, I watched the pilot's face through the glare. He peered through his plexiglass, perhaps scanning the damage, perhaps searching for the smoking wake. I drew my pistol, a small, futile gesture, and a private promise. If we could not stop him with guns, we would try to stop him with steel. I was ready to ram if that was our fate. We had prepared ourselves for that last, terrible calculus, to die intentionally before the crew drowned, to save them from a worse end. But then, something changed. His fire slackened. Either his gunners were wounded, their ammunition spent, or the damage had forced him to peel away. He passed to our right, his guns misaligned, his silhouette ragged and leaking. He punched into a turn and headed away into a rain squall toward the Guadalcanal area, trailing fuel. We called to each other. We won! But there was no victory in the shout. There was only relief that the immediate mortal danger had eased. We were badly shot. 93 holes from 12.7mm rounds scored across our hull, and the nose was pierced where the rounds had come through and struck inside. The bottom of the cabin had a 3-foot hole sculpted by a heavy projectile. Through it, I could see the ocean, a dark, unsettling gap. Water began to find its way in when we alighted. We had to land, to put the boat down on the sea, but our hull had been pierced and would not hold forever. 6 men stuffed life vests and whatever buoyant material they could into the breach, but the water would not stay out. We landed, and the boat thudded onto the water, a clumsy, hurting thing. Water seeped in, and the nose sank deep. Men kept their heads barely above the surface, soaked in oil and blood. They fought like demons to keep the plane afloat long enough to beach it. Eventually, we managed to limp her to a shoal and ground the hull. The cabin was half flooded, and for a while we clung to the boat like survivors to a broken ship. We were exhausted, wet, and grimly alive. When we reached shore, we counted the cost. Wounded, badly shaken, but alive. Many of those who boarded flying boats before us had not been so lucky. I would carry the memories of that skirmish, the taste of oil, the metallic stench of blood, Watanabe's shuddering breaths, for the rest of my life. I kept the bullet from the cockpit panel as proof. It had lodged where my back might have been. The metal sat cool in my palm years later when I would finally show it to others. We had no illusions. That day we had bested a very dangerous, very persistent enemy bomber by a mixture of luck, resolve, and the furious discipline of men who would not die without a fight. We had fired everything we had at him. We had used our boat itself as a tool of survival. But I knew then, as I know now, that the war was changing. The fortresses would continue to come. Our boats would continue to be hunted. We were, in the end, fragile against the weight of Allied industry. Still, there is a strange dignity in what we did. We were not fighters in the accepted sense. We were watchers of the sea. But when forced, we fought with the weapon we had: stubbornness, crew coordination, and a willingness to gamble everything for a chance at life. I remember the faces of my men: fright, courage, the small human things. The way one man laughed wildly at a sudden burst of survival, or how another held his bleeding arm and still tried to help the next wounded comrade. Years later, when I told this story, people asked me how we could have survived such odds. I could only answer that we survived because we had no other choice. The ocean is indifferent. Men are not. We bled and we patched and we dragged our boat to safety. We kept our dead and breathed for our living. That morning of the 21st of November remains engraved in me. A single patrol that became a fight against a bomber that many would never expect to find across their bow. We lost our innocence that day, but we kept our lives. And in the quiet hours after, when the engines were cold and the crew mended what could be mended, we drank tea and listened to the sea. We thanked whatever small mercy the gods had offered, that the names of the crew would be spoken at home once more.